Target employee gets $30,000 vacation after rude customer calls police on her. She looked at the man at the teller over the rim of her glasses. He was throwing a fuss, and she could tell he thought highly of himself. He demanded to see the manager while waving the toothbrush in the air. It was then that Tori realized she needed to act quickly before time ran out. But she had no idea how much this man would do to get his way. Tori knew she had to step in before she was dealing with a full-blown tantrum. She was perfectly aware of how dangerous and uncomfortable to deal with could a dissatisfied client be, and how quick that might happen. But after a short talk with the man, he did something he could have never expected. He called the police on her. As the manager of a Target store in Swansea, Massachusetts, Tori Pirati thought she had seen it all. Dealing with rude and entitled customers on a daily basis had taught her to handle difficult situations with diplomacy and sensitivity. But she never expected all her years working in retail to teach her another surprising lesson about human behavior. If Tori had learned anything from working in the service industry, it was that customers would walk all over her if she let them. She had to be fair, but firm. But never in all her years of working at Target had a customer made such an outlandish demand and then done everything in his power to ruin her life. It all began when David Levitt, a self-proclaimed award-winning journalist, walked into Tori's store and made such an unbelievable scene that the cops had to become involved. In fact, the outrageous clash between Tori and the entitled man would become a battle of such epic proportions that Twitter users were soon scurrying to pick a side. Now, David Levitt was obviously a man who was used to getting his way. The notorious Twitter troll made his way through the aisles at Target and spied an Oral-B Pro 5000 electric toothbrush that had been used for display purposes. Seeing the suspiciously low price on the demo model, he gleefully swooped in to purchase it. Armed with limited knowledge of consumer protection law and an overwhelming sense of entitlement, David casually swanned up to the checkout counter and waited for the cashier to scan the barcode. Call it penny pinching or just looking to pick a fight, he was determined to get his way. Only, Tori wasn't going to stand for it. The flustered cashier immediately knew what David was doing, but she gently explained that the electric toothbrush was for demo purposes only. She pointed out the capital lettering that clearly said display above the price tag, which was set, by default, at 1 cent. David huffed and puffed at the register, then he demanded to see the manager. Enter Tori, who had been watching the man for the last 5 minutes. She could see that the situation was escalating at an alarming rate. Nevertheless, she was confident that she could handle it. But, unfortunately, she underestimated how far David was willing to go to get his way. Tori approached him and tried to reason with him, but then he whipped out his phone. Another man would have accepted Tori's response, but not David. When she flatly refused to be bullied, his face went from an expression of indignant to defiance as he pulled out what he thought was an ace up his sleeve. He shoved his phone in her face, took a picture, and uploaded it for his 210,000 followers on Twitter to see. When Tori responded by rolling her eyes, it incensed David even more. In a blatant display to show her the extent of his power, he called the police on her. To make matters worse, he was sure to document the situation as it unfolded with live tweets on his Twitter account. Little did he know, it was all about to backfire on him spectacularly. Underneath the photo of the unflappable retail worker, David angrily typed the caption, "This at Target manager Tori is not honoring the price of their items per Massachusetts law." But when he saw that his intimidation and public shaming tactics weren't working, he decided to try a different tactic. Not 15 minutes later, he posted another smug update that had the Twitterverse rallying. "I just had to call the police because at Target refused to sell me the toothbrush," David wrote obnoxiously. He obviously expected his fans to feel sympathy for him. What he didn't anticipate was the tweet storm that followed. In an amazing show of instant karma, his followers immediately began to roast him online. But the show wasn't over yet. Twitter users immediately jumped on the fact that David was clearly wasting the police's time, which was much needed for more serious issues, with such a petty request. David found himself scrambling to defend his actions, stating that he did not call 911 and had explained to the police that it was not an emergency and they could take their time. However, people were not willing to let him get away with it so easily. Immediately, some people commented on his post rebutting the argument David tried to support his position. Eagle-eyed fans were also quick to point out that the law wasn't on David's side either. In a stunning turn of events, they began to back Tori. One user retaliated with, "So, let me get this straight. You're bothering the police because of an obvious mistake Target made that you want to exploit? Because we all know those toothbrushes don't sell for .01. Then you went on Twitter and blasted the photo of a $15 per hour employee just doing their job?" Clearly, David's post didn't gather the type of response he would have expected or wished. As a matter of fact, it caused the opposite type of reaction. But David wasn't willing to admit his mistake, apologize, and leave it at that. After seeing that his followers weren't fooled, he tried the sympathy card one more time. "I have not been able to afford to go to a dentist in over 3 years," David retorted. "So yes, I wanted a good toothbrush and was thrilled to see such an amazing prize on it at Oral-B, but at Target refused to honor it and now I have to take them to court." Well, the Twitterverse was about to see to it that that never happened. "How can you be an award-winning multimedia journalist and also be illiterate?" another user wrote scathingly, referring to the obviously incorrect price tag on the toothbrush. "It's for the display, not the item. Probably because that display is a spot on the shelf and has to have a tag on it because of the store's internal system." Then, Twitter users turned their attention to Tori. "I want to go give this woman a hug," one former retail worker to another user wrote. Clearly, David chose the wrong fight to pick when he decided to go berserk on a retail worker who was just doing her job. Then, someone had an amazing idea that would turn the tables against the self-important journalist. One woman who read Tori's story was so sympathetic toward her thankless occupation that she decided to do something to compensate her for the hard time the ill-willed, scorned journalist had given her. The woman in question opened a GoFundMe account pledging to raise enough money to send the retail worker on a well-deserved holiday. Tori, whose full name was unknown to the Twitterverse at the time, earned the nickname #TargetTori. Soon, the internet was flooded with her story. Memes were made of her now famous eye-rolling photograph and local news stations clamored to interview her. People were so enamored by the battle between the rude man and the blue-collar worker that the donations began to pour in. But would they reach their target of $5,000? Meanwhile, David Levitt's face also began to flood the internet. His appalling behavior had earned him an unflattering meme of his own, referencing the "let me talk to your manager" temper tantrum-throwing people that retail workers have to deal with on a daily basis. And, just a few days after the story went viral, the GoFundMe account had garnered over $35,000. It wasn't long before Target Tori had been tracked down and the money that the GoFundMe account had raised was released to her. She opened a Twitter account of her own under her new moniker to express her gratitude to all the netizens who stood up for her. But the story doesn't end here. She had something else to announce. She has since decided that instead of going on a holiday as originally intended by the creators of the account, she will donate all the money to charity. And all because Tori refused to sell him a demo toothbrush. Another man would have accepted Tori's response, but not David. However, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Any current or former retail worker can vouch for how nasty and demanding some customers can get if things don't go their way. That isn't fair. These people are just trying to do their job, and they often go above and beyond to satisfy the customer. However, some people can get so difficult to deal with that sometimes these retail workers are justified in taking some sweet revenge. That's what happened to Sarah. It was one of the most intense days of the Christmas season, even though Christmas Eve had passed. People were rushing to buy late presents for their loved ones, asking for refunds after changing their minds, or just looking around without really buying anything. Sarah Belangi had been working in that store for some months now, and it was the busiest day she could remember. Nothing could have prepared for what she would live that day. Just like every other day, Sarah was standing behind her checkout aisle, dealing with customer after customer. The day was turning out busy, but not too stressful. She smiled as she looked at the next customer, a senior lady who had been waiting in line for a while. Little did she know that all hell was about to break loose. At first, Sarah thought the lady was coming empty-handed. Maybe she needed help to find what she was looking for. But then, she noticed something. The woman was carrying a small Christmas-themed decorative item. Sarah smiled and prepared herself to check out the woman's purchase and wish her a Merry Christmas. However, what the woman said as she walked toward her shocked her to the core. After handing it to Sarah, the woman asked for a discount on the item, seeing as it was holiday time. Sarah looked at the label. It was just 50 cents. And that wasn't all. The price had already been reduced. It used to be $1. Sarah patiently explained that to the woman, telling her that she couldn't reduce the price any more than that. But her reaction left her speechless. The woman didn't take Sarah's response lightly. She began arguing with the cashier, saying that there was no reason not to discount an item that was so cheap. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. What did that woman want? Did she expect to get that item for free? She tried to reason with her, but she was in for a surprise. The woman wasn't willing to budge. Even though Sarah tried to make her understand that the item she was trying to buy was already cheap enough, the woman still wasn't willing to pay 50 cents. Sarah had no other choice but to suggest to the woman that she come back the next day and try again. But the lady complained that the item in question might be sold out by then. It seemed like she wasn't willing to give up without a fight. Huffing and puffing, she announced that she would go to a different store and walked away. But Sarah had something in store for her. In a matter of minutes, she had come up with a plan to take revenge on the woman for the hard time she had been giving her and the other customers. As her shift finished, Sarah took her phone and began dialing a number with a grin on her face. Instantly, Sarah bought all the existences in the store for the decorative item the woman wanted to buy. Then, she called every other store in the area and bought all the existences they had too. She could visualize the woman's anger when she realized she had to say goodbye to her much-desired treats. But how much money did Sarah have to spend on her sweet revenge? The best thing about it was that it only cost Sarah $30 to give the whiny lady the lesson. That woman should have thought twice before giving the retail worker a hard time about something that petty. In order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events or places or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental.